We have with us Bhavik Mehta, Deputy Head Research at Century Financial. Welcome with us as usual. First of all, let's start with this question. We can see the company's earnings are being announced and the majority is good. Why aren't the markets reacting to these results, and they are still at these levels for the indices, and they can barely, for example, for Dubai, stay at 6,000 and Abu Dhabi at 10,000?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. See, currently what we are seeing is a classic consolidation phase in the markets. So we've had some really good results from the UAE banking names, real estate names. Against the earnings were very good. But what we basically are seeing is a lot of market exhaustion because a lot of profit booking that is taking place at this point of time before the year end specifically. Now, historically, if you see, if you take the example of DFM index, Dubai index, it has been the best performing index since the last 2.5 to 3 year period. The overall market mobility indicators, as well as if you look at what the banking results have been, the momentum is still with these names. But I would say this is more of a technical consolidation, market exhaustion, rather than a proper correction wave at this point of time.
When we look at the company's earnings, we heard big companies announcing their results, such as Mar Properties, and the numbers came better than the expectations. But if we look at the stock of the company, it's totally opposite to the company's earnings. How do you explain that?
Well, to my view, what the investors were actually expecting was some kind of big dividend announcement, as that happened, I think, during the last October-November period. So that didn't definitely went through. Somehow there is also a sense, from the earnings that we see, that the UAE property sales might have peaked. So in the sense that the majority of the off-plan property, all the new project launches have already been done. So the entire focus is now shifting to the cash realization cycle of these particular names. So the overall enthusiasm may be more to do with, no major dividend announcement as such. That is why such a muted response.
When we talk about enthusiasm for the cash, where is this cash going? Will it be pumped or injected in the markets once again? And if not, what is the stimulus to repump or re-inject the money in the market, especially that we have weak liquidity in the UAE markets in general?
Well, as we head into the closing of this year, typically what we see is a lot of activity that happens from the tourism sector side. So again, because we're talking about the MR stock, the numbers, the footfalls for MR stock, MR Mall Group happens to be very good from the December to the March period. So maybe we're talking about the mall recurring revenue that can support the stock prices. If we talk about the broader market liquidity, a lot is going to depend upon how the US Fed interest rate decisions is actually going to play out. So that is one key thing that the UAE and the Gulf markets are going to watch out for.
Talking about the Fed, also when the Fed cut the interest rate in the last meeting by 25 basis points, and this has affected the UAE. How are the banks going to be affected if the Fed continues the quantitative easing and cutting the interest rate? How will the banks be able to compensate the impact related to rate cuts?
Typically what happens is, if you talk about the actual interest rate decision to what the retail customer actually gets, there is bare minimum delay of 6 to 9 months. So even if you have very aggressive rate cuts by the US Federal Reserve and likewise by the UAE Central Bank, the actual realization cycle for the retail customer to reflect that wouldn't start before the mid or the Q3 of the next year. So there is always this, the policy transmission gap, as we call it, between the actual interest rates by the central bank and the prime rates that the retail customer actually gets. So it has to start from December for the Fed, for the local banks to actually give it to the UAE customers.
Thank you so much, Bhavik Mehta, Deputy Head of Research at Century Financial. Thank you.
Thank you.